Welcome back to Drive Your Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Master Coach Carrie Marshall, and it's time to go after those goals.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.
Welcome back to Drive Your Thoughts Coaching. I'm Master Coach Carrie Marshall, and I am so excited about today. This is the very first time I am doing an interview on the podcast, and I couldn't find somebody better to have here on the podcast. I have one of my own clients who has invested in coaching for a year because she's really going after her goals. And by the way, it's been pretty phenomenal to watch you this year, but I have Heather Frazier here with me. Hi, Heather.
Well, hello, Carrie and everybody. I'm super pumped to be here. I think podcasts and coaching are amazing.
And Heather, I want you to introduce yourself to everybody because this is not Heather's first time on a podcast. Heather actually has her own podcast.
Yes.
So introduce yourself, tell us who you are and about your business.
Yeah, I'm a life coach. I also host the podcast Pivot Parenting, where I help parents of teenagers, because we think we're amazing when we have littles and then puberty hits and our brains melt and
their brains melt
our
too.
Souls melt because they're so cruel to us sometimes. So I found coaching actually in the midst of my first and second child's puberty. I realized that I hated me and they hated me, and things weren't headed the direction that I had always imagined. While I love little kids, I had always been really excited for midlife, because that's when we'd finally have the time and money to go do fun things, when my kids would be old enough to have intelligent conversations with, when watching them, I loved being a teenager, and so I was always really excited to have teens. And as my kids got older, things weren't going how I had pictured. In fact, it was going the exact opposite.
And that can be really devastating, right? That can be devastating for you, who's always built that up of like, this is the experience that we're all going to collectively have. And then it's not happening for any of you.
Yeah.
And so you said that's when you found coaching. It sounds like that was the big pain point for you. So what kind of led you to coaching?
My friend, she kept saying, you have to listen to this podcast. You have to listen to this podcast for months. And finally one day I was like, girl, I don't even know what a podcast is. She's like, give me your phone. So she took my phone. She's like, it's the app right here. And she led me to a coaching podcast by Jody Moore, which
we both love Jody. Yeah,
we
absolutely.
Love Jody. And Jody changed my life. And I knew that as my relationship changed with my kids, their friends would come over and complain about their parents. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is a chronic issue across the board, and I want to do something about it.
And so now your whole coaching business is built around coaching parents and supporting them through this time and phase of life with their teens, which I think is so important.
Yes, exactly.
You know, the one thing I hear a lot from parents is how, they want to, just like you said, like they want to make the most of this time. And then how these obstacles come up where it feels like instead of making memories and having experiences and having those amazing things, they're like dealing with fallout from an experience or a consequence or, things with school and friends and all of these things that I was just talking to a mom the other day that said, it feels like we're ruining experiences one thing after another based on these big, hard things that are happening in our teenagers' life.
Yeah. And I think in situations like that, it's really good to be conscious as to if you're putting yourself on the same side as your child or if you're pitting yourself against your child. They can be using their agency however they want, and you can still saddle up right next to them and be with them and maintain your own values, even if they differ from your child. But it's definitely a nuanced skill set that this is exactly what I teach. Yes.
Yeah. And that's what you get to help parents do all the time. So today what I wanted to talk to you about is it's kind of like the melding of like your world and my world, which is family goals and why those are important. But the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, you know, as adults, I think it's so important that we are going after our own goals. But why is that important for our teenagers to see that their parents, these adults, still have dreams and visions and goals?
Yeah, I think if we look at our parents who are considered boomers, we're Gen Xers. Did your mom have an identity outside of family? Mine didn't. And so as we're growing up and deciding how to carry on, there's different psychosocial stages of development. And midlife is a reinvention of oneself. Some people call this a midlife crisis per se, but it can be a really great thing. It doesn't have to be catastrophic, but your kids don't need you anymore like they did when they were little. And you can finally come back to yourself to whatever degree you're comfortable with. Again, some women are great at maintaining their identity throughout the little phase of life. I totally lost myself to motherhood, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. But as we come out of our kids always needing us, we have a lot of free time on our hands, and this can be really tricky for parents. And it's fun because my clients, as we work together, we always get to this because their child being teen and them having an identity crisis are the same phase of life.
Yes.
And so it's really common for clients to be like, I don't even know who I am. I don't know what my hobbies are. I don't know what I like. And they're really, really worried about it. Totally normal. And so to be able to set goals, to be able to claim our identity is really important to model for our children because they're going to go through the same thing.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important, is like you said, it's the example that we're setting in the home of like, okay, well, when things shift, right, our kids don't need us as much, then are we just sitting at home, just waiting for them to come and tell us, you know, oh, I need this or this? Or are we actually shifting that identity so that our kids can see like, oh, this is what it looks like when, you know,
yes,
I'm not cheering anymore, or when I'm shifting to a new group of friends, or I'm going from junior high to high school, these kind of bigger things that are happening in our kids' lives.
Well, and it's okay to claim our own identity and be our own self. It's, do you remember The Giving Tree, that really barfy book?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I hate that book because it's basically like the mom or the provider basically gives everything to a very entitled person who takes it all for granted, gives nothing back, does nothing productive with it, and then they both die miserably.
Right. That it does, it's like sum up the book perfectly.
And so if you can give, especially our girls, as women, we tend to want to please and submit, which has a place, but it's also, we have a place to be our own and to be strong and to be independent and have things that are our own. And to be able to be the example of, I'll give when I'm capable and willing to give. And when I'm not, I am going to develop myself. And so it sets a good example for our girls to not feel guilty.
Absolutely.
For owning their own stuff and having their own thing.
Which, you know, both of us are so big into, both of us have girls and daughters at home. And so it's really important, I think, for kids to be able to see. I think the other thing that kids get to see when we have our own goals is that we are pushing ourselves, that we are failing, that we are strong and resilient, and that we're being really inventive with how we're going to accomplish those goals. Yeah. And I think even accountability, I know with my oldest, who's 15, she even just like checked in with me the other day and she's like, hey, how's this goal going? And I was like, oh, it's going really great. Thanks for asking. And it's my business goal. So she was like, where are you at money wise? And I was like, how cool that my 15-year-old is checking in with my business goal, but it's something that she even takes pride in, which is really cool to be able to see, like, when we're really involved and invested in our own goals, it like gets our kids excited to be part of it.
Well, it's a legacy that we can hand down.
Yes. And I love that you just said the legacy that we can hand down, because for kids, one of the best things that we can do is root them in legacy.
Yeah.
And show them, whether it's our own, their own, or past experiences with generational things, what are we telling our kids about who we are and how we show up?
Yeah.
And if it's not a great story, how to break that.
Yeah. Several years ago, I went back to college, and one of the grounding beliefs that I had was that my mom had done it too. She had gone back. I remember I was maybe 9 when she graduated from college, and going to her graduation, and how proud I was of her, because she had gone and done that really hard thing. And so when I went back in my late 30s, I was like, okay, my mom can do this. I can do this. And so it was really helpful, and paying it forward to our child. So my son just graduated high school, and he has his own online business. And the market's not doing so well right now. And so he's been sort of struggling in that. And because for years now, I've been chasing my own personal goals, I can help him in his headspace. I'm like, okay, so this is totally normal. And, I was able to really advise him. He actually listened, which was amazing because of all the coaching that I've been doing on myself to be a better parent. And it was a really valuable conversation, and I was able to have that conversation because I've been doing my own goals. Mm-hmm. So I was able to help him in his headspace. I could identify where the issues were and give him kind of a paradigm shift.
And like you said, I think that, that space of him being able to listen because he's watched you do it is so important.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about family goals now. What is a family goal to you? How would you define that, and why are they important?
Yeah. For my family personally, and it looks different for every family, every January we have a little whiteboard in our house, and all year long our family goals are hanging up. And then in January we go through them, and then we write new ones, and we revisit them every so often when we have family get-togethers. So family goals can really look however works for your family. Some people hate January stuff, and that's cool. Don't do it in January. You can do quarterly stuff. You can do weekly goals, whatever works for you. But I find that the root of it is something to work toward. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really loose interpretation. So it really can fit everybody.
Well, and you can really define it for like you said, for yourself, and, thinking about, well, what do we want as a family? I think whether it's a single goal or a joint goal, couples, family, we just really want to think about the objective that we're trying to get to. Mm-hmm. And so I remember as a kid, we did a goal where we had to walk as a family for however many miles. And if we walked from our house and then the distance of Disneyland, then we earned a trip to Disneyland.
Amazing.
But the one thing that we had to do was we all had to be there walking. Right. And so, I was talking to my mom about it the other day, and I was like, okay, so what was the thing? And she was like, well, a couple things. She's like, number one, you guys were just getting lazy. She's like, you were just watching too much TV, and it was like a summer thing. But she's like, but number two is we were seeing that there was a very big disconnect between two of your siblings. And she said, and we just really wanted to see, like, well, if we take away screens, if we take away friends, if we just make it about our family, then what happens to this relationship? And she said it was that the relationship could then come together, and that we were able to have all these great conversations while we were walking. So it was really cool to work on that together, but it was like seeing that there were several objectives there, right?
Yeah. It's always great to know your why of the goal.
Yes, absolutely. So what are some of the biggest obstacles that you see with family goals, whether it's with your clients or in your own family?
Differing opinions, for sure. Everybody has their 2 cents of what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do and what they're excited about and what they're not excited about. But the thing that I would say is zooming way out and, again, being clear on why would we set family goals. So like for our family, everybody gets to kind of contribute to the list. And there are some that are more exciting and some that are not.
Right.
And that's okay if you like your reasoning as to why.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing that you said before is you were talking about when even your values or what your teens want to do is different than you. So how do you go after those objectives when maybe your teenager doesn't want to show up or doesn't want to participate?
Yeah, a great example of that is my husband and I are practicing members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and our 2 oldest no longer identify with that religion. And one of our goals is to worship together on a regular basis. And so you really have to alter your expectations. So our goals as a family, and we have several, which can make a difference, but to connect and to contribute and to evolve and be better people and stay connected as a family. And so that's not one that they're willing to participate in. But we have family vacations and other service goals that they are excited about and that they do want to connect with us and contribute to society through. And so I think it's in your expectation and execution that, because we like that goal, but that's not a value system that they want to embrace any longer. And they're adults, so it's not like they're 12 and they get to do it anyway. They just won't come.
Yeah. So it just sounds like you said, like managing your expectations, managing your mindset around it.
Yeah.
And then really coming back to what's the overall why for any of it, which it sounds like connection is huge for your family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that, though, of thinking about kind of that overall why, because I do think that sometimes we get into the goal, like I said, like walking with our family, it wasn't perfect every time, right? Sure. But it's like, okay, what's the overall view of this? Zooming out, like you mentioned.
Yeah. It's easy to miss the mark. Like you're like, okay, so we want to have this as our primary reason, whether it's to serve in the community or become nicer people or whatever. And then you're like, and this is how we'll execute it. And you're in the details. And then you lose sight of why you're doing it and things aren't going well. And it's easy to get frustrated and want to throw in the towel when all you really need to do is recalibrate.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that recalibration. What does that look like?
Remembering your why. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, we actually are doing this to actually have some fun and connect and have a laugh. But we're all taking the situation far too serious here. So how can we lighten it up? How can we bring it back to the whole purpose? Again, it's looking beyond the mark or reaching beyond the mark, or I don't know what other phrases we have for it, but kind of losing sight of the purpose.
Mm-hmm. So as a coach that's really helping adults connect with their teenagers, what do you think is the one thing that most of your clients are wanting and needing with their teenagers?
Well, they think that they want their teenager to change so they can feel better.
But what is it really that they're wanting there?
They are just wanting to feel peace amidst struggle. They are wanting to feel love toward their child and from their child. And we humans, we do the same thing over and over in different situations. And we all think the other person is holding what we want ransom from us. If they would only stop yelling, if they would just come home on time, if they could please stop lying, if they could please not be promiscuous, then I would feel the peace and happiness that I so desperately want. But no, we have to feel the peace, and then we can discuss behaviors.
Yeah, and let them choose for the most part. Yeah. Well, and so let's talk a little bit about, we've kind of talked about those older teens. Now let's talk a little bit about those junior high kids.
Yes.
Which I have a junior higher, which is so fun. It's such a fun age, but they're kind of facing different struggles as we kind of maybe create family goals, or they're going after things for themselves. I see a lot of like identity shift of like, who am I? And is it cool to snuggle with mom, or is it not cool to, be included with family things or whatever? So what do you see as ways that we can support our littles? I call them littles, but they're not that little, but our junior high age kids, as we kind of try and still include them in family goals and things like that?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. So the stage of development of early adolescence is actually a sense of identity. This is why in junior high, they go through friends like Kleenex, because they're going to break up with one friend group, the next friend group they're going to try on, then the next. They like country music. Now they're totally emo. Now they're going to, dress really preppy and listen to Taylor Swift, like whatever. Like they're going to try on all the hats. And so if they are feeling good mentally, they'll probably go along with a lot of the variety of goals to try stuff on. This is also, though, an age where it's really common to hate yourself and hate the world the very most. And so it's really important, if they're totally withdrawing from all family, to screen them for depression and anxiety and things like that.
Will you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that often parents don't know what that looks like. Maybe we're concerned about it, but what is the steps, or how do we even do that when we're worried about our teenagers with anxiety and depression?
Yeah, there are a lot of red flags, and you can Google it and come up with so many, but some common ones are they withdraw socially from family and friends. They're in their room a lot. They sleep a lot. They either eat a lot or don't eat a lot. Their sleeping cycle, either they're sleeping too much or not enough, even though they might be trying. It's okay to ask your kids really hard questions. Like, hey, have you ever thought of hurting yourself? Are you hurting yourself? Do you know people who are hurting themselves? We think that if we ask them these questions, that it might encourage them to behave in such a way. But statistically, actually asking really nosy things benefits them. It doesn't actually help them think, oh, that's a good idea.
So talk about how that's a benefit for them, because I do think that that is important. But what's the benefit to being a little bit more direct in asking those questions?
They might be really scared to tell you. And kids who are naturally inverted, sometimes passing notes really helps. Like writing notes.
That was totally me. That was me with my mom. Like my moms have kept the notes, and they're pretty funny, but it was like the one thing that I could do to talk to her.
It's so hard to say things.
Right.
Even up until, basically until I found coaching. Sometimes it would only be like lying in bed at night when it's totally dark, and I just like spit it out at my husband. I'm like, it's so hard to say, but here it is. It's even worse for adolescents.
Yes.
And so just to be really mindful and ask direct questions and to assure them that it's totally cool if this is going on. It's not a problem. And we can address it generally too, like as the whole family. An analogy that I really love are like glasses or a heart condition. Like, would you think that this person is bad or had done something wrong if they had a heart condition or if they needed glasses? No. Sometimes things in our brain go wrong, and we just need help to get our perspective back. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's no shame in it.
Yeah. And that's in a podcast episode that I talked about earlier. And that's the exact thing that we're talking about is, expanding and contracting your social, your mental health team. And that's exactly what we need to be teaching our kids as well, of like, sometimes we expand just like we talked about. You know, my daughter's had surgeries, so she needs a plastic surgeon in her life right now for her hand. So we expand the team for her physical health. Same thing with our mental team.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
So that is important though, because I think that that's part of sometimes our family goals is sometimes we're going to find that maybe that one family goal might need to be put on hold because something else comes up that's more important as a family, right?
Yeah.
Keeping someone safe, getting someone healthy, those types of things.
To rally around and support and love each other.
Yeah.
For sure. Which can be a great goal in and of itself. And mental health isn't going anywhere. And so to educate the whole family is a really great thing for everybody for the rest of their life. But yeah, as far as, and then sometimes our teenagers can just be too cool for school, right? And they don't want to do it. And in that kind of situation, I would really recommend, we never want to take things personally, and we never want to make things really dramatic or heavy, because that's never helpful. And so like to tease, to make things lighthearted, to just be like, that's cool, you don't have to like it, and we're still going to go try this new restaurant, or we're still going to go on this vacation or go on a walk or whatever. Like, that's cool. If you want to put on your AirPods or whatever, like, meet them halfway. Don't make it super big deal-ish.
Yep. That Disneyland trip that I was talking about, my brother does not like Disneyland.
Yeah.
So he had his headphones on the whole time, which my mom was like, it's fine. He's totally here. We had the experience. He can totally wear his headphones the whole time. And so I do think that that comes back to the expectation, which I think is kind of the theme of family goals is number one, really deciding your why. Number two, figuring out kind of the objective of what we're trying to do. And then number three, really reminding yourself that your expectations may need to be adjusted during this whole process.
Yeah. And one of those expectations definitely should be some parts of it are going to be amazing and some parts are going to not be amazing. My son, bless his heart, he's surrounded by girls because I have 3 daughters. And so when we love to travel, that's how we connect as a family. And he hates shopping, like hates it. My husband likes it and all the girls like it. And so he just gets to come along. And he's a good sport. And we try to not be too obnoxious. Like we try to help each other out. But yeah, expecting that he's going to be a little grumpy a few hours in, yeah.
Well, and I think that when we go and put this as a family goal, that's maybe even kind of the next step is that everybody's going to need to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of it is sometimes we almost shield our kids from making sacrifices as a family, like individually. And I think that that's one of the keys is that it's not just on you or your husband to make sacrifices, but that it absolutely is part of becoming an adult and a human to have sacrifices that need to be made for other people for, you know, like he gets to go on the trip, but then that's several hours of his time that maybe he doesn't want to be there.
Yep.
But then that also means that then he gets to participate in the rest of the vacation.
Yeah, and we all had to chill while he had a surf lesson because that's what that was on his list of things that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So we got to wait for him, which turned out to be great. So definitely having the expectations that parts are going to be amazing, parts are going to be rough, and that's all good. When parents, this is a common misconception that I see that causes a lot of angst in parents, is that they are meant to provide a happy, good experience all the time for their kid.
That's a huge, huge thing that's always going to be a letdown, right?
Yeah, for everybody.
For everybody.
Because we can't do that. And if they think that we're in charge of that, that's going to be disappointing for them too.
Well, and you and I as coaches, we know that everybody, you know, it's experiences are happening and then everybody gets to decide what to think about it.
Yep.
My husband and I, we thought it would be really cool to rent this limo for my daughter, who's a high schooler, for the last day of school. She hates surprises. So, you know, I just want to do it. I think it's fun. I love all of her friends. I think it'd be really fun for all of them. And so I was like, you know what, maybe we should check in with her. And she was mortified. She was like, absolutely not. And so it was like, I had the thought that how cool that would be. She had the thought like, no, that would be super embarrassing. Yeah. But I realized in that moment, I was like, oh, it's just whatever she decides to think about it. It's just an experience. We didn't end up doing it for her. Funny enough, though, she called that day. I think I told you this, but she called that day and she's like, Mom, I need you to come and pick up 12 of my friends. What? And I was like, oh, awesome.
Like in a limo?
That's exactly what I said. I said, you know what would be really great for this? And she's like, what? And I was like, a limo. And she goes, oh, yeah, it would have been. But it was funny. So then we had to take 2 cars, pick up 12 kids, bring them back to our house. It was totally fine. But it was just interesting watching that whole experience happen where, you know, one of our goals is to create memories and experiences. So that felt like a memory and experience, but she was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of come back and say, we either do it and it's like, whatever, she can be embarrassed, or are we going to say, okay, that's totally fine, and let go of that expectation? And that's what we had to do. And then it turned out totally fine. But it's important for us to like watch how we're having experiences and how we think we can create happiness for our children, but we can't.
We cannot. And oddly enough, they don't think like us. They don't have our same personalities, which you just, before you have kids, you think they're going to be little clones and you'll control that they never throw tantrums. But it's not so.
Yeah.
And it's really important too. I love planning. I'm a planner, make plan face. Nothing ever goes according to plan. So while I love the art of planning, like the limo, or how the vacation will be, or how their birthday will be. Today's my daughter's birthday, by the way.
Oh, that's so amazing. How old is she?
My baby's 12.
What?
I know.
So crazy.
It's so crazy. And she's a planner too. So she outlined for me how she wanted her day to be, which is amazing. But plan, and then know that you're probably going to have to set a lot of those plans aside, and it's going to be a little different, and adjust your expectation to be able to roll with that.
Yeah. Okay, that just kind of rolls right into what I want to talk about, which is goals. Now, you invested in coaching with me because of goals.
Yes.
How many adjustments have you had to make this year around your goals?
I mean, a lot. And it's not going how I thought that it would. Some really pleasant ways and some hard ways. But that's the name of the game.
And it really is. And that's why, like, family goals, personal goals, it's been really, I told you, I think a couple months ago, I said, eventually you're going to hit about this time some really hard obstacles that are going to make you question everything that's going on and whether you want to do this or not. And then you text me, and what did you say?
And I'm like, I don't think this is going according to plan.
And it just ties in so well with family stuff, right? Yeah. Like you mentioned, like we start families, we start goals or whatever with these kids, and we think it's going to go a certain way. But we have to really remind ourselves that at some point we're going to get to that space of like, this isn't working. I don't know if I want this anymore.
Yeah.
This is hard.
And that's when it's really important. I've really appreciated having you in my corner, because we do need somebody like I was to my son when he's like, I don't know what's going on. We all need that person who keeps us just stay the course. This is actually going according to plan. So if y'all don't have a coach, get a coach. I highly recommend Carrie and I.
We're amazing.
We're amazing. But whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, have somebody in your corner that's the voice of reason, that knows the name of the game a little bit better than you, that can support you through whatever it is.
So tell me a little bit, because I know that sometimes our goals as like a family maybe is like to do well in school, right? So it might be kind of this general goal, but then each of our children are trying to accomplish it differently, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you think that having a support for almost like the parents is important as our kids are kind of individually trying to hit goals, whether it's like sports or school or anything else in their life?
Well, it's just a trickle-down effect. The more educated and helpful the parent is, the more the child is going to see that modeled, and our children track and replicate what they see us doing that they think is beneficial, and sometimes some not beneficial stuff too. But the emotional skills that I model for my kids since I found coaching is huge. And they will always have those in all of their relationships. And it's the same with accomplishing goals. They're watching me, who learned from you how to break it down, how to execute, how to come back when it didn't go according to plan. And I can mentor them. It just is a mass trickle-down effect.
So I want you to kind of talk now about what your group is for this coming year, because it's brilliant. But so Heather, once again, coaches parents of teens. But where was the gap, and why was this group so important to you that you created it?
Yes. So last fall I had one group, and it was so amazing that I'm doing 2 this year. So this will be the second year of parents of seniors.
Okay. So this group is for senior kids coming into their senior year.
Yes.
But it's for their parents. Mm-hmm. Why is this such a crucial time for parents to get extra support in this relationship with their kids?
Well, you don't know how many times I've heard parents say, I have 9 months to cram everything that I haven't been able to get into my child before they leave, and they're freaking out. And the good news is I have a 21-year-old. I'm still giving her parental guidance. So you don't just have the 9 months left, which is nice. But that last year has a lot of nuance that no other year has. They are applying to colleges and planning their next big move in life. And this can be really confusing for parents sometimes, because they think they need to know the answer. Yes. Or their child should know the answer. They are learning, like, does my kid know how to do laundry and clean a bathroom and cook like 3 meals? Are they going to starve to death or just live off ramen?
Budgeting, right?
Budgeting is
figuring
huge.
out how to make money, and then can they show up for jobs? Can they do that? So that's huge one for a lot of
athletics.
Yes.
Athletics are huge the senior year. This is often a year where they finally find that special someone to date, and whether or not the parents like them, and if they are being a little more intimate that the parents would like, and they're finding all the text messages and curfew and friends, and there's a lot in the finality of that last year of them at home. And so for me to be able to support the parent and teach them how to better communicate, to build that foundation that their child can then launch from.
Mm-hmm. And it's so, like you said, it's important to support the parents, because so often I think in that senior year, there is so much attention on those kids.
Yes.
And so then, which is amazing and how it should be. But then I think that, like you said, we then have expectations of the parents. Like, you should know how to apply for school and when to do it. You should know, how to have these conversations with your kids about jobs and sex and all of the things that they should be.
Insurance.
Yes.
All of it. Yeah.
And so I think that I love that you're really supporting those parents so that they can, in this last year, 9 months of school, like during the school year, support them with all of those questions. The other thing I love about your group is that it isn't just like a 1 month thing. Like, you are offering support throughout the entire year, where sometimes we're so excited about the beginning of the year, but then that first term ends and we're like, oh, are they going to graduate?
Yeah, that happens.
And so then I love that you're offering support for the whole year through the ups and downs of that senior year. So you're offering that one. You did that one last year. It was such a huge success.
Yes.
So you're opening up a new one. Tell me about this new one and why it's so important.
Okay. Y'all, I have 4 kids. The hardest year, junior high. That first year in junior high. And my baby that just turned 12 today is starting junior high. And so she's my 4th one to have go through the massive friend crisis and the introduction to sex and drugs that you aren't ready for them to go through.
Which they didn't have. And the swear words, right? Like all of the words.
Kinds of the cussing in the
all
hall.
The words that they're coming back. I had my oldest came back and was like, what does this word mean? And I was like, oh, okay. We're having that conversation.
Yeah. My oldest came home from junior high in 7th grade and was like, Mom, all the boys laugh about the locker that's next to mine. I don't get the joke. like, well, what's up with the locker number 69? And I'm like, okay, so we're going to have
that conversation.
Fortunately, before then we're like, all the sex stuff we'll talk about, and we kind of try to keep that as an open dialogue. We hadn't quite gotten to that one yet, but it can be really jarring. That junior high year just is so hard to see your child's heart broken because their friends hate them. And they had them all through grade school to have your child go through puberty. I know a lot of my kids, that's when they have started to struggle emotionally, and you kind of don't know what to do, especially if it's your first. You don't even know how to recognize it.
Right.
And so this year, the group is for ages 12 to 14 for your child, middle school, junior high.
I was going to say, which is so important. Yeah, I think that's important, that it's not just the seventh graders. It is that middle school, junior high experience that you're really supporting parents through.
Yeah, because it's rough to watch our child struggle, and it is a struggle for them. And parents need the support so that they can then support their child. It really is a trickle down again.
Right. So my daughter, who was in 7th grade last year, had this hand surgery that I've been talking about on the podcast. It's been a really big thing for our family this last year, but she had to not go to school for February through May. And that, I was so grateful for coaching and for my own coach to support me through that as I was navigating her feeling like her friends wouldn't remember her.
Yep.
And all of these things that had to do with, recovery and how she was doing and watching her mentally struggle. And then what do I do with that? And so I love, once again, that you have this group together, because even that felt, with even a support of a coach, it felt really lonely.
Yeah.
And so I love the group aspect of this as well.
A lot of times parents are really worried to confide in friends and family because they don't want to be judged, and they don't want their child to be seen differently or judged. And so it can be very lonely. And so to come together in a group where other parents get it, and it's a judgment-free zone, and you're learning tools and skills, it's kind of magical. And one of the awesome things too about group is that sometimes it can be kind of nerve-wracking to always be the one getting coached. But when somebody else is going through something relatable, your adrenaline isn't spiked. And so you can learn and participate in a silent way that can almost be sometimes more beneficial.
Well, and that's what you do so well in your groups, is that you create a space of safety where we really can talk about anything in that group. But like you mentioned, it's like watching someone else get coached. Well, it's either beneficial right now, or I've even watched in group coaching somebody be like, oh, I'm so glad I watched so-and-so get coached about her kid going through that, because now here I am with my kid, and I'm like, I know
the answer.
I know what's going on here. And so that's one thing with group coaching that's so important. But I do think that it's important to understand that, in a group, when we're talking about our kids, that's one of the things that you do best, is you keep the safety of our kids and what we're talking about so confidential.
Yes.
Which is key in a group, is the safety that you're creating, which you're phenomenal at doing. So 7th grade group or junior high group, senior group, they're going to be totally separate because the conversations are so different.
Yes, completely separate, and only 10 seats in each, because I do want it to be a really intimate personal experience where we're all forging relationships with one another. And
it just gives everybody then the opportunity to get to know each other, like you said, like a group of 10. And I know from what we've talked about in our coaching that like those groups are then really sometimes what is creating lasting friendships for people as well, of like, oh yeah, you have a senior, I have a senior. And that's kind of like people were texting each other and things like that made a difference. So I love these groups so much, because like we mentioned, a lot of times parents aren't getting the support that they need.
Yeah. And it's really easy because our children are going to be stressed and worried. Like when it comes down to taking, the AP tests and the finals and your kid is going to be a stress ball. whether it's their senior year or the first time they've ever had midterms, where I'm hitting both. You need to be the voice of reason and stability, which means you need support so that you can tell your child, you know what? It's going to be okay. And you actually believe it, because your kid can track you. And if you're freaking out, that's not comforting.
Yeah, they can absolutely feel that.
Yeah.
And I do love that for coaching. That, like I said, it's helped me so much with my daughter. So when she is up at therapy, hand therapy, and she's crying, I'm like either a puddle with her and it's not a big deal, or I'm like, I got you. Yeah. But it's because I've done the coaching and the mindset work before so that I can be there for her, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. The best gift that we can give our children is our own emotional stability.
Say it again. That's so important.
The best gift that we can give our children is our own emotional stability, because not only does that help them to stabilize, but we teach them what it looks like and how to practice it.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun. I love having you here. So tell everybody, how can we find you? How can we work with you? Where can we find more information about these groups?
Yeah. The best place is my website, heatherfrazier.com, and Frazier is spelled Frazier, Z-I in the middle. And it's just right there on the homepage for the groups. Again, only 10 seats in each, and they start the end of August and run through spring.
And they're virtual, so they can be from anybody. It's not a local thing. So
they're going to be on Tuesdays.
Absolutely. So Tuesdays, virtual group.
Yep. And then if you don't have a child in one of these said groups, I do one-on-one coaching as well, which is also phenomenal.
Awesome. And then where can they follow you? Instagram? I know you show up on Instagram.
Instagram. Heather Frazier Coaching is my handle. I'm on there all the time. I love to interact with people so they can shoot me DMs. If you're on my website and you don't like social media, scroll to the bottom and get on my email list. That's a great way to message back and forth with me as well.
Awesome. And then also check out her podcast, which is Pivot Parenting. And she has amazing episodes.
Over 100.
So many great episodes, so much great content over there. So make sure to check that out. Well, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time on Drive Your Thoughts Coaching. Thanks for listening to this podcast episode. If you're ready to get in the driver's seat of your own life, you can come and follow me at Drive Your Thoughts Coaching on Instagram, or come and see more ways to work with me at driveyourthoughts.com.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.